Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here, and my guest today from California, Annie Kuhn. Hi, Annie.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to have you on my channel. So I actually met you through Suzanne de Rosa and through that particular quilt that's on the back of you. I saw it. She posted a picture about some exhibition and that quilt caught my eye. And I was like, can you please introduce me to the artist? And that's how we've met. Could you tell me how you got into quilting in the first place? Like, when did you start quilting?
I started quilting. My first quilt was when I was 14 years old. Um, I was just always fascinated with quilts. One of the quilts that you have on your screen is inspired by my first quilt that somebody gave my dad. He was a doctor and they traded. It was in the times when people didn't have a lot of money, so they'd say, can I give you this quilt or whatever. Anyway, this quilt was so cool, and I would just spend hours trying to figure out the pattern and the colors. So I was always obsessed with quilting and sewing. And I made my first quilt, like I said, when I was 14. It's just squares, and my daughter still has that quilt today. It's been in threads and requilted and quilted, but she's not letting go of it. So yeah.
And when you think about quilts, right, there, like, is it something practical in your view, or is it just art to exhibit on the wall, like the one you have behind you? Like, how do you view quilts?
Well, I think I'm very pragmatic, so it's very hard for me to kind of go into another form of quilting, which I'm getting more into the art quilting scene. I love that you can wrap yourself in beautiful cloth that you've made yourself, that you've made the patterns and the designs. And I like them to have a little bit of quirkiness to them so that another little girl, I always think of a little girl who's going to be looking at them, trying to figure out what the pattern is or what you know, how it was put together. So it's just, it's art you can snuggle in.
Right. I mean, is quilting something you take with you everywhere you go? Like, if you're in the medical office and you're waiting for your appointment, will you be stitching something?
I'm always stitching something, whether it's putting hand appliquing or making little coasters or something. I always have to be making something.
What about quilting that, because you do multiple arts, like you know how to knit, you crochet, you dye fabrics, I saw some glass that you making, like all the glass ornaments and jewelry and stuff. So you like artist in many different art forms. What specifically attracts you to quilts?
Quilts have been kind of the common thread for me. So I've played with glass. I got okay with it, pretty good with it. I've played with, I love to crochet and knit and things like that. But I always go back to quilting. There's just something so fascinating about the fabric and the colors. I love color.
I saw that you do ice dyeing for your fabrics. How does that work? Like, why ice dyeing in California specifically?
I love the effects. It's with ice dyeing, what you do is you wet your fabric and you prepare it for dyeing, and you put it in a container that has holes in the bottom, and then you put ice on top, and then you put you sort your dyes out on it. It's very organic, and as the dyes melt, they seep into the fabric and the colors mix together in their own unique way. And so you get so many organic results. and it's just exciting. Like sometimes that looks like flowers to me, and I just get so excited when I mix the colors together.
Well, do you know in like ahead of time what you're gonna achieve, or is it always a surprise?
I sort of do with the colors, but I'm learning also, like if you buy a color that was mixed at the company where I buy the dyes, those colors within that dye. So say I use an orange, well, an orange is made of yellows and reds. And sometimes red will run faster to the dye than the yellow will. So they're gonna mix, it is gonna be a surprise, but I think the more you practice it, the more you can kind of figure out how it goes. But I do like that organic, like surprise about it.
So your quilts are not what like I'm thinking of traditional quilts, like Amish quilts, right?
Right.
Are you ever influenced by that? Like, are you influenced by the traditional techniques of quilting, or is it always like just your vision of whatever you want to put on that quilt?
When I first started quilting, and up until a couple years ago, I used a lot of patterns, and I love that. Quilting for a lot of people is very precision oriented and very meticulous. And the points have to be just a certain way. And there's so many YouTube videos on how to do it perfectly. And I thought, oh, that is too much. Like my soul can't do that anymore. I don't think we're meant, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. So when I got into what's called improvisational quilting, was so freeing. You know, you just cut the fabric and you sew it together. And sometimes I'll put the fabric in a bag and just pull out colors that, and then I sew them together. And it's like I'm working with my higher power, so to speak, with my spirit. I'm just working with something else that's creating this together. So it's kind of a team effort. It's the same I did with glass, the way that I approached glass. I couldn't do it the precision way, but I could do it where things became more organic and kind of a surprise.
Are you a perfectionist in other areas of your life?
You know, that's a hard one. I don't think so. You know, we're all perfection. We all have a way that we want things to look. And I think I was just so tired of not making myself happy that way. And so I guess I'm still a perfectionist. I can still show you where things are wrong or things are not matching up, but I also rebel against it. And it's like, let's just let it go. Let's just, like, I can have so much fun putting things together. And it's not as much fun when I'm sitting there, you know, mad because my points didn't match up.
Right.
So,
Well, when you come up with the idea for your quilt, what inspires you? Is it like the fabric that inspires you, or do you have like a precise idea of what it's going to look like and then you find fabric that's going to match it? How does that process work?
well, in the beginning, when you know, the first 30 years of quilting, it was kind of looking at fabric and then, and a pattern, you know, and figuring out what goes with what. They've always been a little off, you know, like my quilts. I remember my brother-in-law looking at my quilt and my sister's quilt, and hers was very, all the colors were matchy. It had the same blend to it. It was, and mine was like kind of wacky and wild, and it was always that way with me. I was always, my mother would say, oh, are you sure you want to put those colors together? Are you sure you want to do that? So I do come up with an idea and then I kind of play with it from there. Now I feel so much more free because I may get a color palette or I may get a shape that I want to work with. But from there on, like I said, it's kind of a dance between me and the piece that I'm making.
Well, how much time do you spend planning the quilt versus actually sewing it?
Not much. I just like to pull things out of the bin and just go, oh, this is fun. This is fun. Sometimes I get too many ideas at once, or I'm ready for the next quilt. If I work with patterns and a fixed fixed piecing, I'm more trying to get through that job than enjoying the process, because then I want to make the next quilt. Now, the way that I work, I am enjoying the process and I'm just playing and having fun. And if it doesn't work out, I cut it up and do something else with it.
Do you always work like on one project at the time, or do you have multiple projects that go parallel to each other?
Pretty much, I just get so excited and I'll start something else. And I think every time I start, I'm just like, I'm going to just do one project. I don't know if this happens to you, but it's like from now on, it's just going to be one project. And then when I finish that, then I can go on. And I've been packing for a big move I'm making. And I started sorting my projects and I think I had like 15 projects, of things that I wanted to finish. And it's like, so I kind of have to learn how to let it go and just let it be okay that that's my process. Sometimes I'm frustrated because I feel like this is another thing that happens on social media. It's the compare and despair. I compare myself. Oh, look what she's producing. Look at how much she gets done, and I work a full-time job. I got a lot going on too. And so I've just got a different process. And so it's just important to honor the process that I have.
Well, when you're on social media, is that a place of inspiration for you? Is that the place where friendships are made? Like, how do you treat social media?
I use it as inspiration. I like to study what people are doing. I've learned so much from social media, and I think besides the comparing and despairing kind of deal, I think what I'm learning is that everybody has their voice and everybody has their way, and it's all stunning. Like, it's not fixed piecing. There's so many amazing artists who take off of the fixed piecing classic quilts and do amazing things. And there's so many artists that do just handwork, and stitch everything by hand. And what I'm learning is that whatever my voice is, whatever my voice I can find for quilting is my voice. And I will find my people that appreciate that or not, but it's really for my own pleasure.
Right. Well, when you exhibit some of your quilts, like what's the reaction you get? Like, do people ever question your quilts or do they just admire them? Like, what sense do you get from it?
It's so interesting. I really don't exhibit my quilts. This was like the first one I exhibited. I think I did a fair, a county fair, about 5 years ago. And that was it. And I won, a couple of prizes, but nothing substantial. But this was just put in. My friend came by and said, oh, we're doing a show. It's on, I think the theme was We're Still Here after COVID. And I was like, oh, and I pulled it out and I said, here, put this in it. So that was it. And it was so surprising because I have fantasies about like, someday I'm going to get, somebody's going to appreciate me. But so it was really kind of a fun thing to get connected to you and to the other folks. And I had a lot of really good responses to this quilt.
I mean, are you thinking like sometimes in terms of collection, like as an artist, like do you think about that? Like if I did my own exhibition, I would put those 15 quilts there. Like, is that the process of thinking?
That's kind of where I'm going with it. Some of the quilts I sent you are, they're called color memories, and they're colors I put together based on my memories of growing up and things like that. And they're strip piecing. So I think I'm getting more, and I've got some ideas. I did a map quilt where it was the map of the street that I grew up on. I am kind of slowly putting things together. I don't know what my life is going to look like in the next few months, and I haven't done anything for the last few months. But I think if I continue, it'll be an autobiographical experience. And I think I'm ready for that. I think I'm ready to show, because this stuff and the improv stuff and the memories very personal. And that's showing like my heart and who I am. And that's very scary. And now I think I'm ready. Like I think I'm ready to show myself out there.
So the name of your company is Heart Centered Textiles. What does it mean to you? How did you come up with that name?
I just loved the idea that when I do my work, it feels like I'm dancing with my soul or part of myself that that is hidden. And so it just felt like it was coming from the heart. And also a lot of times when I do the ice dyeing, there's little hearts that show up on my pieces. And it's like, oh, look, that's a heart. So I just feel like it's a whole thing.
Some of your quilts that I saw, they have this like almost childhood like feel to it, like the little flowers in a pot, like they almost like something like a kid would draw. Is that something that like, do you doodle the quilts before you put them together? How do you come up with those ideas?
Well, that quilt in particular was the quilt that I used as I used my quilt growing up, my baby quilt, as inspiration. And so that quilt had the flower pots and then the flowers. And then I started like trying to make it look like theirs, whoever made that quilt. And then I was like, no, I want to try this kind of flower and that kind of flower. So then I got really into just, see if this works, see if that works. I don't really doodle much. I'm kind of like, how they say like measure twice, cut once. Like I cut and then I regret it. That's why I like dyeing fabric. I started using recycled sheets. I find cotton sheets and cotton linens at the thrift stores, and I dye those because it's like I can't just go buy new fabric all the time. So,
well, what's your fabric stash looks like?
well, right now it's very pared down. I've had to get rid of so much, but it's kind of fun. It's growing. I try to keep it to a minimum, but I have you know, when I get overwhelmed, then I kind of like clean everything out. So it's hard to say everything's in bins and put away, but there's plenty enough I'm taking with me. I gave away, I went and bought all this over the last 2 years. I've been collecting these beautiful linens, antique linens, and things that I could use for dyeing. And I had to let go of a lot of that stuff. I had to decide. I'm moving to Hawaii, so the shipping is, you know, enormous.
Right.
So I had to let go of a lot of, it's like I go in one door at the thrift store, you know, to donate, and then I go back in to buy. And so now I've just gotten to where I have to donate everything I already bought.
Right. I mean, to me, what's interesting also about you that you work with something like hard, like glass, and then like what, you know, fiber artists think of like soft, cuddly, sort of like heartwarming kind of thing. Is there like a difference for you, like in the materials that you work, like that you need to be in certain mood to work with one medium versus another?
Yeah, the glass was more of, I felt at the time it was more of a way to make a living. Like I had my work in, I would sell in San Francisco, out on the street, or I would go to street fairs, and it was more marketable, I thought. But I always went back to fabric. I always, even when I had my big glass studio, I started to like slowly get back into quilting, you know, and fascinated again by the colors and the shapes and the sewing. So yeah, they are very different, but I prefer this quilting.
Do you hand sew most of your pieces, or do you use machine
I
for?
use the sewing machine. Yeah.
Um, is there like one part of quilting that like if you could give it to somebody else to do for you, you would?
Well, I don't like the quilting process. So I have sent things out to quilters to be done, but I'm learning that that's just a part of doing it, because when I'm doing my own quilting, and I do use the machine for that, and I have done, and I do sometimes will do hand quilting. It just depends on what what the effect is that I want. I like big stitching sometimes for hand quilting, and but I can have a little more control, and I can be a little more creative with my own quilting versus sending it out to a quilter and having them do it.
You mentioned that one of your friends used the cut up jeans for his artwork. What's the craziest material you ever quilted with?
Um, Well, I have been saving coffee bags, and because I just think they're really cool, or all the food bags that we buy food in, you know, like rice, Japanese rice, beautiful packaging. I like packaging. Um, so I have plans for that. Have I worked with crazy? No, basically, but I do like using recycled materials.
How much time does it take you to like produce an average quilt of yours?
Oh gosh, really depends. I did a fixed pattern quilt for my daughter that took, a couple 100 hours. And I did send that out to be quilted because it was fixed pattern. It was exactly like the artist had designed it. I didn't feel like there was my heart and soul in it. If there's my heart and soul in it, it can take, you know, it can take 100 hours or less. It depends. Like if I'm just having fun and I get to something that's, you know, this big and I stop, I think I'm on a new adventure with what I'm doing now. and I'm doing smaller art pieces and also frameable pieces. Those don't necessarily take that much time. This took a long time because I was learning a new technique. But I think when I do more of those, which I will, I think I'll get a process going that won't take more than maybe 50 hours.
I mean, are you planning to turn it into a business selling quilts, or is that still like just art for you?
I wish I would like to. I would like to.
Is that like very difficult to price something like this? Because like, how do you price art?
Right? And our culture doesn't really accept quilts as art. It
Right.
is getting better at it, but that's the challenge. It's like saying, you know, my piece is equal to somebody else's painting. You know, the value of what I make has value, rather than, oh, that's a woman's craft, and you know, and isn't it your hobby? I mean, you can go on some of the craft sites that sell their crafts, and I consider this a craft of sorts, but you can tell people who value what they do by how they price it. And it's really hard to compete in the quilting world because you can go on those sites and they'll have a quilt for $60. And it's like the fabric costs 3
Right.
times more than that.
Well, I
So
also find, because like it's such an international market nowadays with Etsy, it's like it's global market, and
yeah,
what's minimal wage in the US is like a monthly salary in someplace else. So, you know, people can sell it from other countries, can sell it for fraction of the what cost you to buy just the materials.
right, right. Yeah, it's so I think you have to find your niche, and I study a lot about what other people are doing, and I have a lot to learn. So it's not only finding your niche, but it's finding your own value as an artist, that I'm worth this, that I'm worth going to a gallery and saying, look, this is my collection. Are you interested in showing it? And to believe in myself that it has value.
How much time do you spend thinking about it, like thinking about how to market yourself, what galleries to hit, or if you should do it? Is that like part of your everyday thing? Is it come to your mind like once in a blue moon? Like how much do you stress over it?
I don't think about it very much because I think it is really stressful. I also don't feel like I have much of a collection at this point. That yeah, I don't think about it much. Now where I'm going, I'm thinking there might be more opportunities to show my work. So, but we'll see if there's opportunity to do my work, you know, if I can do more of it.
I mean, you mentioned that it's almost like a memoir for you because you're going off your memories and like some of the impressions. If somebody, let's say 100 years from now, stumbled on your collection of quilts, is there a single quilt that you think would explain people about you?
Wow. That's a great question. Well, I think, you know, I think this quilt at this point would tell a story. I think the colors and what I used in the background express who I am as a designer. And then the image of myself and how I see myself would be a good example.
Right. Is there like any plans on teaching others how to create quilts like yours?
Not really. isn't a very, this is not an original concept. I took a class from another artist, and of course his name escapes me, but he's amazing. Luke Haynes is his name.
I actually interviewed Luke.
You did? Oh my God, I'm on the same, oh my heavens. Well, he's phenomenal. And so I took the class from him. So I wouldn't reteach it. Although I do have to say that I made a portrait quilt about 20 years ago of my son before any of this came out, you know, like before Luke was teaching classes. And I wish I had that quilt. He keeps kind of bringing it out every time I ask him, and I take a picture and then I can't find the picture. But so it's not like it's a super original idea, but yeah, I wouldn't teach what Luke has taught me unless I got it, you know, permission.
Well, do you see yourself like, because you knit, you crochet, you do like all other kind of things, do you see yourself ever leaving quilting and branching into some other area of fiber arts?
I always do, like any little shiny object, you know, that's cool, I want to do. I've recently gotten into surface design, which is basically what you know, the dyeing and the ice dyeing is. And then I've gotten into layering other prints and techniques on top of those. So, you know, that's another avenue to go down. Creating fabrics for Boro technique, the stitching technique I've done. And I'm always like, I got to get that up on Etsy. I admire your work because I know how much work it takes to stay focused and do the editing. And, you know, this is just the easy part. Probably you've got all this planning to do and all this editing and promotions stuff. So that takes a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the research beforehand, finding the artist and then editing and then promoting. So it's like, it's a whole comprehensive package, basically. It's not just the interview itself, for sure.
It's a job. It's a full-time job. Yeah.
When you meet people on Instagram, like, do you feel like they are your people, they are your crowd, people with whom you can like talk shop and they understand all your frustration and all your excitement?
You know, I wish I would put a little more effort into developing relationship in that way. Mostly I just like things, you know. When I've been in a quilt guild or a quilt group or any kind of creative group, I really get a lot from the conversations and knowing that like these are my people. That's really fun.
Do you get a lot of support from your family and friends, like about the quilts and like other arts that you do, or people roll eyes?
I think they're very supportive. They're very supportive. Yeah. Yeah. I think for my family, my you know, grown-up family, not my kids, there's a lot, there's probably some eye rolling behind my back just because it's like what I do. But they're also they've gotten more and more supportive as we've all gotten about supporting who we are and how we show up and what we create. And my kids, I think they're tired of getting all these quilts.
Well, have you ever been like disappointed in giving quilt to somebody and it's just either in some dusty corner or being not taken care of properly? Like, is there somebody who is not quilt worthy?
Not at this point. I let the quilt tell me where it needs to go. And I learned that a long, long time ago, and it was kind of disheartening. I was like kind of mad about it. Like, I just made you. What do you mean you want to go there? I'm so proud of you. I'm like talking to this quilt. I'm so proud of you and the way you look. And I picked the colors myself and I put it together. And you want to go to his house? Okay. And then it turns out that, he still uses it. His kid uses it. It's really a good feeling. When my kids were in college and I gave them quilts, they were pretty rough on them. And I've learned I still have them with the holes and everything in it, but I just know that they're used and they're loved and they're appreciated, and that they're just fabric and they're going to get more quilts.
Right. Is there like one particular quilt that you would never give away?
Not sure about that. At certain times, I think I'll never give this away. I love it so much. And then later on, it's like, oh, you want it? Okay, you can have it. Or you want to buy it? All right, I'll sell it to you.
When you look at your older quilts, like some of your early work, do you see mistakes? Do they bring memories? Like, how do you look at an old quilt, what pops into your head?
Well, I look at it and I think of what I was doing when I picked out the fabric, where I was, or who picked out the fabric, and how much fun it was to put that together, and how excited I was to finish it and to present it. And then I start to look at, the points and the corners and things like that. But I'm learning more and more, like, this is my handprint, this is my thumbprint, imperfect lines. Like, if you want perfect lines, buy it mass produced from China or India.
When you look at other people's quilts, are you critical of their technique, or you look at them as a piece of art with all the imperfections in them?
Their technique, I'm not so worried about. It's their color choices and their, the way they put things together. Then I can get pretty snarky about, like, I just don't like, whatever, my own taste.
Do you expect Hawaii is going to change you as an artist?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I think it will. I'm hoping that I'll have a lot more freedom, especially with art quilts, because you don't need to roll up in quilts in Hawaii. Right. But I have also really gotten into, I think one of the pictures I sent to you was a quilt that I made from Hawaiian shirts, aloha shirts. So I'm really excited about making quilts from aloha shirts, and especially like baby quilts and so forth, things that I think are appreciated and usable and marketable.
Right. Well, I seriously can't wait to see what else you're going to create. I love seeing your quilts. They really eye-catching, and I think they're art. I think they're beautiful. So I'm hoping that Hawaii is going to inspire you for something even more interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So you're so amazing. I really appreciate this time, and I feel very comfortable.
Glad. Thank you so much for being a guest of my channel. And I'm so glad we got to talk.